everyone, I'm Joanna Penn from thecreativepenn.com and today I'm here with Polly Courtney. Polly is the author of 6 novels, including It's a Man's World. She is also a media commentator, appearing on UK TV and in well-known magazines and newspapers. So welcome, Polly.
Hello, hi.
It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh no, so let's talk about the media then. I've seen you on, morning TV, and you're in the papers and you're in magazines. So you've obviously got a really good relationship with media and PR and stuff. So first up, tell us a bit about, how you personally deal with media.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't actually say I have that much of a relationship with them, but what I do is think about the media a lot and see how I can, if I can participate in some way. So always at the back of my mind, whatever stage of a book, whatever stage I'm at with a book, even if if it's only half written, if there's a theme in there that I think is being, being talked about in the media at this point, I'm quite happy to kind of go and offer to write a feature for a newspaper or a magazine, or get wheeled on to TV to talk about it. And it sounds a bit sort of arrogant to say I'm happy to go on TV and talk about it, but actually if you've got something to say and you genuinely have thought it through and you've researched the subject, then it's worth giving it a go. Authors have said to me, oh, as if I could ever go on TV or radio. But actually, I do believe if you've got something to say and it's intelligent and you've thought it through properly, there's no reason why not. And one of the things I always say is that particularly with newspapers and magazines, the features writers, they're often looking for things to feature. Whereas with book reviewers, they're kind of not looking for any books to review. They've got piles and piles of them, and they don't even get to open half of them. With features writers and news and other parts of the newspaper and magazine, there's often spaces.
Okay, no, that's interesting, because I know everyone's now kind of thinking, but how do I actually do that? How do I get, I've thought very intelligently about my stuff, but that doesn't mean I'm on like breakfast TV talking about it. So how have you managed to get those articles? And you've been in, I remember reading Company magazine when I was whatever, and I saw you had an article in there. And so how do you actually get that media attention?
Sometimes it's a kind of cold contact situation where I will see that a writer has written about a subject before and they might be writing about something else, and I will approach them. Or if there's a news story out, I will just go to a features writer, and I don't know them. I don't think I've really met any of the people who commissioned any of the work. And I'm by the way, I'm not a well-connected media person. I really, people might think that, oh, you just must mix in those circles. Not really the case. But so sometimes it's a kind of cold contact. Other cases, it's a referral from someone that I've worked with in the past, and that's really important. So one of my pieces of advice would always be to follow up every lead. So even if it seems, even if it's a hairdressing magazine that sort of, you happen to meet someone in the pub who works for one, and she says, oh, I know a friend, follow up that lead and see if the friend works somewhere else and whether she's looking for stories to write about, because something will always lead to something else.
And so that's kind of print, print, TV, radio. I mean, I originally, a few years back, when I had a non-fiction book, I got on all of those and made it on national TV and was really excited, thought, yay, I'm going to sell millions of books. But actually, I saw no sales blip whatsoever from that, and therefore I switched all my attention onto online marketing. So how do you feel about does traditional media sell books, especially if you're self-published and not in the bookstore?
Well, I would say it always comes down to what the book is and what the target readership is for that book. And the brilliant thing about new media, online basically, is that you can be so much more targeted. So if you've written a book about growing courgettes, that won't appeal to the whole world, but there is a segment of society that's really interested in growing vegetables, so allotment owners and people on forums, and you can really target them. Whereas if you went on TV, it might be exciting to go on TV, but you probably wouldn't hit all those you know, the actual number of people that you'd hit that would really want to read about growing vegetables might be quite small. So it's definitely worth thinking quite a lot about who you think your core market is, and that's a really hard thing to do if you just write general fiction, because you think, well, all sorts of people like general fiction, and that's where the national newspapers and magazines and TV and radio helps, because you do hit a cross section. But if it's something niche, and particularly if it's about an industry like writing, you know, publishing, I think the forums and all the social networks and sort of those niche areas online are definitely the way to go.
And I do think it's easier for non-fiction authors, you know, for fiction authors specifically. I mean, you've written contemporary books with themes that you've been able to, I can see, you know, how you can spin off, you know, things to talk about in interviews. What about, you know, people who write, say, fantasy? You know, how can a fantasy author or someone who's set a book, you know, somewhere else, how do they go about finding a hook for media?
I think that's where genres actually help. Sometimes I think genres don't help, so if people are trying to pigeonhole work as something that it's not, and I've struggled with genres with my work because it's fiction and it's commercial and page turner, but it's not it's certainly not literary, but it's also not chick lit, and so I struggle with pigeonholes. But in some cases it really is genre writing, and in those cases there are communities, mainly online, some of them offline, for people who, you know, love fantasy or sci-fi or whatever it is. And I think that's probably the best place for them, because people don't mind if it's in the right environment online. People don't mind someone saying, oh, I've got this book out and it's about this and it's a bit like this and this. But if it's not the right environment, then obviously you don't want to be salesy. But there are places, I think, for genre fiction online.
So how do you sell your books now? I mean, do you, and I mean market your books? Do you blend online marketing? How are you doing that now?
Yeah, it is definitely a blend now, because actually my book sales are about 50-50 paperback and ebook overall across all titles, and bizarrely it changes quite a lot between titles. But because that's 50-50, I can tell that the kind of readership is a mixture of types, and therefore they don't all hang out on Twitter all day, but some of them do. So I do Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and all those things online. I do things by email quite a lot of face-to-face actually. I just sort of meet up for coffees and help spread the word in various ways. But also I do use traditional media as much as I can. And as you said, it's fortunate because the things that I love to write about tend to be a social issue, or something that's mildly political, or something that's generally quite topical. And that helps, because that gives the hook for the media. But yeah, definitely a blend.
And do you have, I'm sorry, back on media again, because this fascinates me, and looking at what you're doing makes me think, oh, I should maybe try a bit harder, because it's also about personality branding, isn't it? Around that, it can be very good for your just name recognition. Yeah,
definitely. And people come up to me and say, oh, you're the one that dumped the publisher. Yes. And no matter what they thought of that story, they remembered it, and it helps. It
does. So is it, you know, let's just be... And maybe this is too commercial, some people will be like, but when you're actually thinking about writing your book, right at the beginning, should you be thinking about these topics and things that potentially might be newsworthy?
There's two schools of thought. I do, but I don't write purely based on the PR hook. Absolutely not. I don't think I'd be able to force my writing if I didn't want to be writing about it. But I can tell that, having spoken to a lot of authors, some of them just, they would curl up and cringe if they thought they had to do that before they started writing, because a lot of people do write because it's it starts off as a kind of cathartic process, and they just want to get it out. And I think that's a really good and valuable way of writing, and you can get some really good work out of from that. So I guess they would just definitely not want to think about PR hooks, but if you can, then I would recommend doing that, because it may be even just a small strand of the plot that you might want to put in, but it might be enough to become a hook for the press later.
Yeah, that's a tough one,
It
and
is tough.
but I mean now, you know, if people do get a publishing deal, you often have to think about marketing really early on in the process, and self-publishers I think have to as well. So I don't think people can shy away from the word marketing. But
No.
just another question on that: you're an engineer, you were in investment banking, and now you know all this stuff about, you know, media. Do you have media training, or is this something you learned along the way?
I've actually never had any media training. I don't know what it would entail, and maybe I should have some. But yeah, I just I guess don't swear on TV. Someone once did say to me something about not wearing shiny earrings on TV, but apart from that, I'm not sure. I think a lot of it is sort of watching and observing, and that goes for newspaper and magazine writing as well, because when I write for Grazia, it's a very different style of writing to when I write for The Guardian, and that's really just from, you know, looking at what's out there already, and I don't actually read a lot of women's magazines that I write for, so I have to read them in advance of that. So I guess it's a bit of copycat and just common sense.
and learning along the way and confidence again.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, really, the confidence thing. I think just don't be afraid of those journalists and producers, because they're just humans as well, and they're just doing a job, and actually you'll find that they're quite receptive to ideas. They'll often just ignore you or say, no thanks, not today. In fact, you'll get that 9 out of 10 times, but you know, that 1 out of 10 is worth gold dust in a lot of cases.
And what? I'm sorry, I keep going on about this, but I'm so fascinated. Does it take a lot of time to do all of this pitching and all of that? Because I don't have a TV, so I don't watch TV. I saw you at the gym. But you know, and I read The Guardian on my phone, but I don't read any other magazine stuff. So I'm like, God, if I was to pitch things, I'd have to go and read all this stuff and watch all this stuff.
There's a lot of stuff online. There's a lot, really. When I first went on Sky News, I was asked to do the newspaper review, and I thought, what actually does that entail? And I literally Googled it, and someone had put a clip up, and I was like, oh, right, yes, I'll do it. And that would be my other tip. Always say yes, and then work out how you're going to do it later. If you get an opportunity, take it.
But do you monitor things like, you know, do you monitor any specific feeds or subscribe to any services?
That's a good point. I am only really in a sort of business sense, if that's the right word. I monitor what's going on kind of in the media, and what's happening kind of with brands and various things that just happens to interest me. But other forms of kind of alerts and feeds, I guess, really I just stay on top of the news, and that's sort of various sources. So yeah, Guardian on the phone is invaluable, and sort of, yeah, I guess a few free newspapers and magazines, that sort of thing, just sort of picking up whatever I can. But yeah, I don't know if you necessarily need a TV to keep it. No, I don't think you do you? But as going back to the time element that you mentioned, it is time consuming. It really is. Particularly pitching to newspapers and magazines. Like I said, you'll get 9 out of 10 times you'll get a rejection, and you'll think, I spent all day, like, you know, firing off emails trying to get into a newspaper with this story. But it does pay off sometimes, so it's worth doing.
Oh no, that's a really good tip, and it's different for this podcast, and you know, we don't really talk about this, so this is fantastic. But where can people find you and your books online?
Amazon, and I guess my webpage, and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. I guess Google me. Yeah,
and just
hopefully the right things will come up.
And just tell us your URL.
It's www.pollycourtney.com.
Fantastic. Well, thanks ever so much for your time, Polly. That was great.
Thanks. Nice speaking to you.